Welcome to A.U.M, Ask Us Marketing. I'm Kalli Fedosenko of Kalli Collective, a digital marketing agency designed to build relationships between you and your target audience through data-driven, custom websites, content, and advertising. Today's episode is brought to you by the Financial Planning Association. The FPA is a great organization for advisors like you to get resources and opportunities to network with other advisors and centers of influence. And they're having an amazing national conference this September where you can meet me live in person in the vendor hall at my booth. So today, we talk a lot about building relationships with your target audience, but what about the actual sales process? Do you have a repeatable process? Can you train your team on how to make a sale without you? You might be good at what you do. You might even be the best in the world, but without a repeatable sales process, you are not going to grow no matter how great you are. So today we're talking with Rachel Covert, a money coach, and hopefully I said your last name right, a money coach who helps six-figure earners ditch their debt and the paycheck to paycheck cycle, and how she grew her business by 200,000 in 1 year by implementing a non-icky sales process. And we're going to talk about how you can do the same. I met Rachel at FinCon last year, and I was impressed and inspired by her presentation on sales because this is not only something that I want to implement into my own business, I think it's really important that advisors implement these steps as well. So join me in welcoming Rachel. Hi.
Hi, Kalli. How are you?
I am good. I am so excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me.
Okay, here we go. Have to scroll up here. It does my notes. And everything has moved around, so give me 1 second. All right, here, 4-stage sales process. You grew your business by using the 4-stage sales process, which I have here on the screen below me. Number 1 is marketing and pre-call. Number 2, pains and gains call. 3, your offer, and 4, objection handling. So I'd like to talk about each stage a little bit. So first, obviously, there's the marketing and pre-call. This, for our audience, this is where people like me would help you in producing content and building trust and attracting the right people. Now, Rachel, you encourage vetting prospects before you have a call. How do you recommend doing that?
Yeah, so I think your time is your most valuable asset. So before you let everyone and their mother jump on a call and ask you 97 questions about how they can save for retirement, we do it in 2 different ways. So we are very active on Instagram. So I have a lot of DM conversations with prospective clients where I ask them some questions to try to get a sense if I'm the right person to help them. And that is part of the vetting process. I don't want to get on calls with folks who I just cannot help. It's not respectful of their time and it's not a good use of my time, right? So that's one thing that we do. And then the other thing that we do is we always ask kind of a set of questions. So we either use Calendly, which is our booking software that we use, or we also use Dubsado. So depending on kind of where the client comes from, they're going to fill out a form. And I'm going to ask them a lot of pretty direct questions on that form to make sure that before I get on the phone with them, I know that I can help this person out. Or I at least think I probably can help this person out. Let's find out some more details and see if I'm the right person to help them with their problems.
What if they're not? Do you just cancel the call?
Yeah, usually what we try to do, or what I will do, it depends on who's kind of talking to them, whether it's myself or someone who's working for me on my team, is we just try to sort of verify, like, did what they put in the form, did I understand what they put in correctly? Because sometimes also people feel a little bit scared and they don't necessarily want to commit to buying something. So they'll say something in the form that's not entirely what they mean. So I literally just reach out to them. I'll send them an email or a DM or even a text message, depending on how they got in touch with us. And I'll say, hey, you said this on the form. Can you help me understand a little bit more what you mean by that? Or if it's really, really not a good fit, like for me, I particularly help high income earners. If you are a low-income person who really, really needs help with a super strict budget, that is not my area of expertise. Or if you have mountains of credit card debt that you are having a hard time getting out of, or something like that, I'll try to point the prospect to a resource that is more in line with their needs and more in line with their budget, so that I'm still providing them with value and still being helpful, but also saving both of us a little bit of time.
Yeah, definitely. So, okay, they've been vetted, they pass. Next is the pains and gains call, which I remember you saying the goal of this call is to walk away knowing what they're truly stressed about, why they're stressed, and then what they're hoping to gain from working with you. Oh, and there is one more. Why it needs to happen now and not in the future, which actually I think is really important and for me hard to do.
Yeah, and it's probably hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So one thing that I want to clarify, I know you're going to bring this up later, but I
Yep.
actually do parts 2, 3, and 4 all on one call. So my process is
Okay.
a single call process. Some
Yeah.
people do a 2-call process, but I just find that for me, I tend to find that I can come to a conclusion within 1 hour. But yeah, so the pains and gains call or part of the call is for me to understand, like, what are their pain points? And part of the reason that I need to understand this is to, again, see, am I the right person to help them? But also to help them understand their own pain points. So a lot of people will come to me and say, I feel stuck or I feel behind financially. And I don't actually know what that means. And I don't
Right.
think that they do either. So it's my job to help ask them some questions that will help them to understand what's the real root of the problem here? Like, where are you? And then the gains is like, what are your goals? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish working with me? And you see a lot of folks coming through social media who are like, I want $10,000 a month in passive income. And I'm like, well, that would be lovely. I
We don't want
unfortunately
that.
cannot help you do that. So, of course, that should have probably come out in the vetting process as well. But
Right.
every once in a while, someone will throw me a curveball and tell me on a sales conversation, yeah, I want $10,000 a month in passive income. And it's like really important for me to know what they are looking for. The kind of client who I tend to work with is looking for a safety net. They want something secure. They want something reliable. They want something long-term. They want to get out of debt. They want to learn how to manage their cash flow better. These are the kinds of things that I am looking to hear a client say.
Yeah.
If the prospect isn't saying those types of things, then I know, again, it's like I need to divert them to a different resource.
Okay.
And then in terms of the timing, like, it's really important to know why we need to do this right now, because people get scared to make a commitment, right? And I don't know if, your clients, your advisors that you work with make a great pitch to their client and they help them to see how they're going to help them retire 5 years earlier and save thousands on fees and, maybe some tax loss harvesting or something.
Yeah.
And then the prospect says, great, I just need to think about it.
Right.
Right. So this is going to come back in objection handling. So the reason we need to ask this question now is that we need to help the prospect get past their own fears. Because usually I need to think about it. They're not going to think about it. Right. They know if they're going to hire you. And so we need to understand what their sense of urgency is, because we also need to make sure that we can deliver on their sense of urgency.
Right. How do you suggest getting this information? Like, do you directly ask?
I directly ask. Everything that I am mentioning now, I ask very directly. So for an example of like a pains question, I would say, so tell me what inspired you to hop on this call with me today. So I said today, right? I want to know, why are you doing this today?
Right.
And then I will very frequently ask them again. So after I've kind of gotten a sense of their goals, so let's say, oh, I'd really like to pay off my $10,000 of credit card debt and I want to open a Roth IRA. Great. Why is it so important to you to pay off that credit card debt today? You mentioned you've had it for 2 years. So why today?
Yeah.
Right. And you can just ask, most people are coming into these calls trusting that, because truthfully, you do have their best interests at heart, right? And you're not asking these questions because you're a snake oil salesman. You're asking these questions because you genuinely want to know, hey, am I going to be able to help this person on the timeline that they are on?
I love that. You also say, at no time are you selling your features, you're selling the outcomes. And I find this really hard because I'm the one who's doing it. So like it's hard for me to step outside of what I do to tell somebody, okay, this is what you're going to get. Like, because I'm thinking, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that for you and we're going to do this. Do you have any suggestions for people on how to overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, are you particularly tech savvy, Kalli?
Yes.
Are you good at repairing cars?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so if you went to the mechanic and you're like, "My car won't go into reverse," and the
Yeah.
mechanic was like, "Well, we're gonna take the who's what's it, and we're gonna fix the transmission to reconnect the funneling hose with the fluid," you'd be like, "So is the car gonna go back into reverse, or do I need to buy a new car?" Right?
Mm,
Like, that is
mhm,
what you want to know from this conversation.
mm,
Um, it would be like a 97-year-old being like, "Kalli, I want you to help me understand Instagram." And you're like, "Great, let's talk about your story strategy." She's
right,
like, "I don't know what a story is," right? So you
right.
really need to meet your client where they're at. And so while you might be super excited because they're not taking advantage of any of their tax advantage accounts, you're going to help them save a bundle on
Mhm,
taxes. They want to hear not, "Oh, I'm really excited. We're going to open a 401k for you," or "We're going to start taking advantage of this 401k you have, and we're going to choose some really great low cost diversified index funds." What they want to hear is, "Awesome. It looks like we're going to be able to save you around $7,000 a year in
mm,
taxes." Does that sound good to you?
mhm. That's beautiful. Rachel, do you meet with people? I know obviously you help people with financial coaching, but do you help with sales coaching?
I don't, but maybe it's something I should add to my roster because it's
Mhm,
definitely something that I feel like really inspired because I think there's so many talented, skilled people out there who
mhm,
genuinely want to help people. And the barrier to entry is not their skill with providing people with their services, it's their ability to get past the discomfort of selling somebody a product. And you need to
yeah,
really approach it with, "This person needs what I have, and I'm just
mm,
going to help them see how I can help them."
yeah,
Right?
right. Yes, you should do it.
Maybe it's something to add. I need to get my business a little more automated before I can start, teaching other people how to do what I do.
Yeah, that 10,000 passive income.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'll let you know when I get there, okay?
So the last part of the sales process is objection handling. You say not to give your price until you've handled their objections. What is your opinion on posting pricing to on your website to weed out prospects who can't afford you?
There's there's 2 approaches to this. You can absolutely post your prices on your website.
Mhm.
So my clients as a financial coach, I don't know what type of advisors you typically work with, but a lot of
Yeah.
advisors are working with folks who are quite close to retirement, right?
Mhm.
They're 5, 10 years out. They need some tax planning. They need to make sure that they've got like a good plan in place to make their funds last. I'm dealing with people who are in a lot of financial scarcity. So most of
Mm.
my clients have pretty healthy salaries rolling through and
Mhm.
they have nothing in their checking accounts. 6 days
Mhm.
before their next paycheck, they're already overdrafting. So for my personal audience, the idea of spending money to
Mhm.
get financial help is a little bit of a tough thing for people to get past. And
Mhm.
this is not everybody, but this
Right.
is some people.
Yeah.
So, if you're a person who has $25,000 of credit card debt, even if you're making, 8, 10K a month from your regular day job, the idea of spending a few $1,000s
Mhm.
to learn how to pay off your credit card debt seems literally bananas,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
so for me, I need to make sure that this person sees the value in working with me before we start
Mm.
to talk about the price. Because
Mhm.
Otherwise, people will just be like, "You must be on drugs. I will do this on my own," which does still happen sometimes.
Yeah. What you were saying about high earners living paycheck to paycheck. I actually was going through some old A.U.M streams, and we had Dr. David Tabasky, and he said 36% of high earners live paycheck to paycheck. So, I mean, it's a big percentage out there. So, I think advisors need to know how to work with these people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's also a financial advisor is a bit more of a traditional path than a
Yeah.
financial coach.
Mm.
I think that that's
Mhm.
a little bit for me. And if you have other coaches who might be in your audience,
Mhm.
it's a little bit more of something that you have to help your clients understand. How am I different from an advisor? What are the benefits to
Right.
working with a coach? Maybe what are the benefits to working with a coach before you start working with an advisor as well?
Right.
So,
Mhm.
a lot of advisors don't want to take someone on who's 35, has $35,000 of credit card debt, and nothing in, no
Assets.
meaningful investments, right? That's not
Right.
their target audience. So,
Right.
also helping the prospects understand, is what I need a coach or is what I need an advisor?
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, I would in the future, what I'd love to see is financial coaches and financial advisors teaming up because I feel like that would be so powerful for people out there.
I
Um,
totally agree with you. And actually, I met a financial advisor who was saying that she doesn't work with what she calls accumulators. She's like,
mhm,
that's not my audience. I only work with folks who already have $1 million in assets. And she's
mhm.
like, I need to help people get to where they can come and work with me.
Yep.
Right. And I am definitely an accumulation only person. Right. One of the
Right.
things I repeat to my clients constantly is, 5 years, 10 years before you're really getting serious about retirement, you need to meet with some type of financial planner, financial advisor,
Right.
some type of professional who's going to help you map out how you're going to use all this money you're accumulating.
Yeah, absolutely. What I love about your sales process is that you're getting the prospect to convince themselves just by asking these questions. Like you don't have to do the convincing. Because I think for a lot of us, that's like the icky part is I don't want to have to convince somebody to do something. But in this method, I'm just asking questions. That's it. And they're convincing themselves. Now I know you're not a sales coach, but have you found talking with other people? Because I know you presented this at FinCon. Um, is there a stage that tends to get overlooked more than other stages?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask this.
Yeah.
I think that the transitions are really important.
Mm.
Actually, can I answer this with two things? So, number
Yeah.
one is the transitions. So, how you go from asking them, getting kind of the gains, like what are your goals? Tell me why that's important to you,
Mm.
etc., into your pitch is really important because
Yeah.
you don't want to be like, great, let me sell you something now, because
Right.
that immediately puts people's hackles up, right?
Yep.
So, the transitions from also like the welcome part of the call, the small talk, into the let's make this call a sales call, all of those transitions are really important because that's a
Mm.
big trust building part of the process,
Right.
is making sure that the client or the prospect feels comfortable moving on to the next stage. And it's up to you as the person who's leading the call to, number one, make sure you are in fact leading the call and not letting them lead the
Mm.
call. And number two, make sure that they are being asked the right questions that make them say, great, could you tell me how you could help me? Because that's a
Yeah.
lot more powerful than you being like, let me tell you about why you need me, why
Right.
your life isn't going to be good without me, right? You want them to say, amazing. So can you tell me a little bit about what it is that you do?
Right. Yes. Um,
So that was one thing. Wait, there were two
oh
things I
yeah.
want to say. The other thing is asking like that secondary question. So I'm going to give you an
Mm.
example here. So
Mhm.
if somebody says, one of the questions I like to ask folks is, how long have you been struggling with X, Y, and Z? Right. So,
Yeah.
or how long have you been thinking, maybe for a financial advisor, it might be something more like, how long have you been trying to figure out this investment stuff on your own?
Right.
And the prospect is going to say, well, about, 2.5 years maybe. And then you need to ask them a follow-up question to that, right? So like,
Mm.
okay, how's that going for you? And then they're going to say,
Mm.
well, it's been a little overwhelming. I feel like we've been trying, but we can't really like kind of pin it down or whatever they're going to say. And
Yeah.
then you're going to ask them another question. You're going to say, overwhelming? How do you mean by that?
Mm.
Right? Because you
Yes.
want them to help to clarify for themselves which parts of this process have been not so great for me, because
Mhm.
you, as the advisor, want to talk to that when you are pitching them on your offer. Right.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
if they say, well, I'm just not very tech savvy and I'm really overwhelmed by all the jargon, and I just feel like, every advisor I've talked to has just been spitting out lots of words and they made me
Mhm.
feel stupid.
Yeah.
Like, people are really going to tell you what has held them back from solving this problem in the past. And that's the kind of question that you need to ask. So when you hear those verbs that describe distress, so
Mm.
frustrated, overwhelmed, anxious, stressed, you always want to say, you said stressed. How do you mean by that? Or when you say stressed, can you tell me a little bit about like how that shows up in your life?
Right.
Right? So that you're getting them to tell you, because you might think, oh yeah, I know what it feels like to be stressed about money, but they might come right out and say, well, actually I've been, financing my grandmother since 1992 and she had an accident when I was a kid and my family's been paying for her ever since and it's just been really stressful. So they might actually tell you something that you are totally not expecting as well.
Right. Yeah. And just what you said brought back something you said in the presentation, that when in doubt, mirror.
Yes.
Because if someone's like me on the call, your brain kind of freezes up and you're like, wait, what am I supposed to ask them? So when in doubt, can you tell us about mirroring? What is that and how can somebody use it?
Yeah. So if you're frozen or you just don't know what the next thing to say is, you can always basically repeat back whatever the client just or the prospect just said to you. So one of the questions I sometimes ask is like, are you feeling anxious at all about your financial situation?
Mm.
And if they come back and they're like, yeah, I've been like losing sleep over it, you can say, you've been losing sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to respond and give you more information, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this
Mm-hmm.
also really works, and this is important in section 4 with objection handling.
Yeah.
If someone says, I don't know, or I'm not sure, you can just say, you don't know.
Yeah.
And then shut up, right? It's important not to keep rambling yourself so that they have a chance to process, like, what is it that they don't know about, or what is it that's holding them back? Because you want them to share that with you, because it might be that you just forgot to mention something, like, it might be like, oh, well, I'm not really sure. And it's
Yeah.
like, you're not sure? And they're like, well, yeah, like I don't have anyone to watch my daughter while I work on this, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of work.
Mm.
And then you can say, oh, sorry. Actually, it's really about an hour and a half of prep before our first meeting. Do you think you could do that after you put your daughter to bed?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that sort of like, is that explaining it well? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, that was brilliant. There was something else that you said. Don't go into problem solving when you're
Yes.
on these calls, which is very difficult for me with my personality type, which is an SC on the disc profile.
Okay.
So let's talk about that. How do you not go into problem solving? Because, like someone's like, well, this is my problem. Okay, well, let me tell you how I could help that, is immediately what I want to say.
Yeah. And it's not a bad thing to share some coaching or share some nuggets with the
Yeah.
people who you're on a call with, but you want to make sure that it doesn't turn into an hour of you giving them like free ideas,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So if someone is saying to you, of course, you're a marketing specialist. So if we're on a call and we're selling marketing, if someone's like, I just feel really frustrated, like my blog posts aren't ranking, I've been doing everything I possibly can to improve the SEO. You might ask a follow-up question about
Right.
SEO, like, well, like, how many keywords are you putting in there? I'm making this up because I don't
Mhm.
know a lot about keywords, but, and they're like, oh, I'm putting in 2 to 3. Now your gut might be like, okay, well, there's so many things we need to talk about with keywords
Right.
here. You can be like, okay, got it. Well, thank you for sharing that with me. Or,
Mm.
in my case with, a lot of the things that I'm asking about are uncomfortable. Like how much
Mhm.
credit card debt do you have? Oh, about $30,000. Okay.
Right.
That's, for a lot of folks, that might be a lot of credit card debt.
Right.
And a lot of the time I will just say, okay, well, I really appreciate your transparency. I know this isn't
Mm.
always the easiest topic, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
you can divert your own urge to be like, here's a great thing you can do if you're struggling with credit card debt
Yeah.
right now. Let me help you right now, right?
Right.
You can be like, I appreciate your transparency, or, okay, thank you so much for sharing that with me. We're going to come back to that later, because you are going to come back to that later when you're giving them your offer, when you're pitching your proposal to them. All of the things that they have just shared with you are things that you should, if your vetting has gone pretty well, you should be able to help this prospect with those particular challenges. And so
Mm.
you are going to come back and you are going to talk about the solution that you are going to offer them without
Mhm.
necessarily being like, okay, you need 25 to 30 keywords per blog post
Mhm.
minimum. And I'm making that up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't listen to me, but just as an example.
Right. So, okay, prospects. A lot of our advisors are getting leads in from lead generation sites like Smart Assets or Dave Ramsey. Those are the only two that are coming top of my head. So when somebody puts their information in, they are then getting like 4 different advisors, contacts, like who are contacting them. Hey, blah, blah, blah. So let's say a prospect meets with 2 out of those 4, or maybe even 3. If they're on the call and they're like, hey, I want to shop around before deciding, how would you suggest handling that objection?
Yeah, and that's an important one, right? And I think actually, luckily, there's fewer financial coaches than financial advisors. So I personally do not get this objection a lot, but
Mm,
it is an objection that lots of people in direct, like one-on-one sales or
yeah.
B2C sales would have. So I always, when somebody gives me an objection, I always try to get on their side of the table. And I would
Mm,
always say something like, first sentence out of my mouth is always going to be something like, I can totally understand that.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that is because I can totally understand that,
Right.
right? Like, I'm not just lying. I actually genuinely understand wanting to shop around.
Yeah.
So the next question that I would then ask them is, yeah, I totally understand. Can you share with me what some other things that you might be looking for that we didn't talk about today might be?
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to know, are they wanting to shop around because they feel like they ought to do their due diligence?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they shopping around because you did something on the sales call or in the, first meeting
Intro,
with
yeah.
them that like threw them off, right?
Right.
And so, and you can even say, is there something that like you're looking for that we didn't chat about today?
Mm,
And they might say, well, yeah, actually, and then tell you, right? Because it
mhm,
is sometimes a bit of like what we would call a smoke screen in sales, which is
mhm.
when someone's kind of making something up to kind of get out of the sales
Yeah,
conversation.
totally.
So it could be a bit of a smoke screen. It could, and they might just say to you something along the lines of like, you're just the first person I've spoken to, and I really have no idea what else is out there. And I feel like I need to do my homework, right?
Mhm.
As a salesperson, you have to decide, do you want to objection handle that person and risk losing them, which
Mm,
might happen?
mhm.
Um, or do you want to say absolutely and just schedule them in for a follow-up call for, a week or 2 down the line, maybe, 4 or 5 days down the
Right.
line? You can also ask them, yeah, I totally understand. Do you have any other meetings booked already?
Yeah.
And they might say, nope, actually, I have nothing else booked. And you can say, okay, amazing. Well, I would love to kind of reconvene with you. Are you available on, Friday at noon or something? And try to get them
Mm,
back on a call quickly because chances are this is not the biggest priority for them right now,
yeah,
right?
right.
And the person who just happens to be there, who happens to stay by their side, who happens to be like the bug in their ear, is more
Yeah,
likely to get the sale than the
right.
person who just says, okay, well, call me when you've made a decision. Like,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
just basically showing the client to the door, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So you want to say, yeah, I totally understand. Is there something that you're looking for that we didn't chat about today?
Mm,
Also, you'll notice that when I ask a question, I never go up at the end of the question. So
mm,
you just really want to keep like an even voice tone so that you
mhm,
don't sound stressed out. So, is there something that we didn't chat about today? And they might say, well, actually, yeah, like the other thing is I'm actually, this other financial advisor was talking a lot about setting up gifting for your kids to try to save your kids on
mm.
taxes. And so I really wanted to
Right.
talk to them about that. And then you could be like, oh, absolutely. Yeah, like that's fantastic. Actually, could we chat about that right now? So if
Right.
there's something that they actually wanted that they didn't
Right.
share with you during the discovery, the pains and gains,
Mhm.
they're going to bring it up right now. And then that gives you an opportunity to pitch them and say, oh, yeah, that's included in our package. Like that's
Mm,
just a basic thing that we always would do with you.
right. Um, okay, now I'm gonna rewind all the way to the beginning of our call when you talked about you use Calendly and you have a bunch of questions in there. Have you found a sweet spot in how many questions you're asking before the call?
So I ask around 8 questions.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's 10. It depends on how you found me. So if you've
Yeah.
already had a long conversation with me in the DMs, you're going to get fewer
Mm,
questions than someone who
mhm.
clicks on a link and then books a call after seeing a video or something. Those folks actually have to answer more questions. And there's different schools of thought about this.
Yeah.
Mine is that a person who is willing to answer 10 or 12 questions and
Mhm.
actually give some detail and give me some information about where they are is a good prospect.
Mm,
That person is going to be a good client.
mhm.
That person is going to show up for their sales call, right? Because we don't love
Mm.
when people book calls and then they don't show up, right?
Oh, goodness. Yeah,
So
correct.
I'm sure we all have had this experience.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm not afraid to ask a lot of questions
Mm,
because I also, again, I'm asking questions that helps me understand, hey, can I help this person out? And
yeah.
there's a couple of questions that I call red flag questions.
Mm,
Um, And actually, my biggest red flag question, which might not be what you expect, is how soon can you get started if it turns out that we're a good fit?
Mm.
Because you
Okay.
do not want to get on a sales call with someone who's like, "Yeah, I'm graduating with my master's in 2027." You're
Right.
like, "Okay, well, let's talk then." Or,
Right.
"Oh, I'm in September." And you're like, "Well, it's July 15th
Yeah.
today. That's not for 6 weeks. This is a person who is a tire kicker." Right? They
Mhm.
just want to see what I do.
Mhm.
So that's a really big red flag. And I ask that question to every prospect who
Yeah.
might be coming to yours. And I ask other questions too, like, are you willing and able to invest in working with a financial
Mhm.
coach?
Mhm.
People who say no do still sometimes buy. That is not a
Yeah.
deal breaker question for
Sure.
me. It's just people don't want to feel pressured to buy something.
Yeah.
But the people who say yes, that tells me something. The people who say no, that kind of also tells me something, right?
It's actually
So
kinda surprising that they would even book a call if they say no. Like, why are they booking a call?
yeah. Yeah, I think that some people don't necessarily want to say yes.
Mm.
So mine is a radio button question. So it's
Mhm.
like, yes, I am able to invest in myself at this time,
Mhm.
or I can get creative and have access to funds through, family or credit cards. And no, I don't have the funds to invest in myself at this time.
Yeah.
So I will sometimes get people who they don't have cash,
Mhm.
but they have space on a credit card, and since I'm gonna help them pay off their credit cards anyway, they will for sure save money by
Mhm.
working with me rather than paying a 29% APR on a
Mhm.
$30,000 credit card debt for 5 more years.
Mhm.
So they think, "No, I don't have the cash," but they don't understand that they do have the resources.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with my clients with the cash flow that they have, typically, a payment plan will work for them anyway, and they can just pay it out of their regular cash flow.
Gotcha. Okay. As we're winding down here, I wanted to put there it is. Your contacts in case anybody has any follow-up questions, either
Yeah.
on partnering with Rachel because you want a financial coach in your corner, um,
Yeah.
or if you have a sales question, maybe she would answer it. You
Yeah,
can
for
contact
sure.
Rachel on Instagram at symbol Rachel underscore talks money. Is there any other places that people should go if they want to contact you?
Yeah, I'm also pretty active on TikTok, although you can also just send me an email if you have questions or
Yeah.
specifically if you're interested in partnering with financial coaches. I also have a good network of financial coaches as well. So you can email me and it's just Rachel at Rachel Talks Money. And it's Rachel for those of you who might be listening but not looking.
Mhm.
But yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I would always be happy to connect. Do know that my Instagram inbox is a little hectic. So if I don't get back
Mhm.
to you or somehow I miss your message, do not think that I am rejecting you. Please, please, please message me again. And also tell me that you heard me on Kalli's show on A.U.M,
Yeah.
just so I know I can thank her for the connection.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this because I know it's like this. You said you're not a sales coach, so I really appreciate that you were willing to share your secrets and what has worked for you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm honestly like, I think it's one of those things that so many service providers feel so icky about it. But at the end of the day, when your client comes to you and says, "Oh my gosh, Rachel, my net worth went up $50,000 last year," and
Right.
they are so happy they did it, even if you had to do the icky part of objection handling to get them past their fears, it's so worth it when you see your clients blossoming. And so you
Yeah.
have to kind of understand that you're working with human nature here, and it's
Mhm.
worth it to get good at this so that you can help people.
Mhm. I love that. Purpose.
Yeah, don't forget why you started in this business.
Yes. Uh, that is wonderful. So thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome,
I cut her off too soon. I apologize for that. I have not been on the game today. Okay, so let me go over here. Join us. No, I've got the wrong QR code. I told you I am not on my game here. Join us next Monday as we talk about how to conquer LinkedIn. And then, if you're curious, you can take our quiz, which is what was just up. You can take our quiz to find out how your marketing is scoring. Are you killing it? Or maybe you need to work on improving it. You can take our quiz and find out here. And then you can see me next Monday on our live stream. So until